wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kasab. Hi everyone and welcome to A Quirky Journey. I'm your host Jo Whitten and today I'm on my own for the intro. Fuad's away on his big adventure. So if you've been listening to our podcast, you'll know that he's off to do a 4-day water fast in the bush. But he's also away for a little bit longer than that. So he's away for about 10 days and off grid, no phone, no internet. So I'm on my own for a bit. But what I'm sharing with you today is a podcast that we recorded last year with Elyse Comerford, our GAPS practitioner. It's a great podcast on eczema. We've had a lot of questions on eczema lately in the chat group, and it's really important to remember that it's not just the skin that you're treating, it's the whole person, and you really need to get to the root cause of the eczema for it to really heal properly. So Elyse is great with explaining how to do this and to really bring it back to a nutritional medicine viewpoint, and sharing what you can do to change your diet to help with eczema. And how to detox slowly and gently so that you don't get great big eczema breakouts when you're detoxing. So we had this podcast up for a little while and then it was taken down while we did some fixing up some stuff on the podcast channel. So it's back up today and I hope it really helps you. If you have any questions about GAPS, about eczema, anything like that, you should go and check out Elyse's website. So it's ElyseComerford.com and you can find her also on Facebook. And she is really knowledgeable about healing with food and healing with nutrition. So check her out there. You can also ask questions in the chat group and the Quirky GAPS Facebook group. You can ask questions on the Quirky Cooking Facebook page if you like. And we'll get back to you. But if you have personal questions, feel free to email us at help@quirkycooking.com.au and we'll get back to you as soon as we can or pass your email on to Elyse. We really want to be able to help people who are really stuck with their health and just don't know which direction to go, because we've been there and we know how hard it is and it's something that we're really passionate about. So if we can't help you, we'll pass you on to someone that can. So listen in and hope it helps you. Also, I just want to remind anybody who's listening from North Queensland, or if you're going to be in North Queensland in the first week of May, we have our Quirky Cooking and Life-Changing Food seminars in Atherton, Cairns and Townsville, 1st, 2nd and 4th of May. So go to the Quirky Cooking blog and click on the events tab and you'll find all the details there and how to book in and what it's all about. But basically it's 3-hour seminars with a break in the middle, and we talk about health and healing and food and cooking and all sorts of things. And we cook 6 dishes that you get to taste 3 of. And we do a lot of Q&A with the audience. Every seminar is a little bit different because it really depends on what you guys want to know. We have certain things that are at every seminar. So we go through the basics of whole foods and healing with food and the things that you'll read about on the events page. We talk about it every seminar, but then there's so many things that are brought out from the audience that we discuss. And it's just a really interesting, fun, informative, delicious time. And we'd love to meet you guys. It's the highlight of our month when we get to do seminars and meet all you guys. So please come if you're in far North Queensland or North Queensland near Townsville. We'd love to meet you. Bring your book along and we'll sign it. If you want to buy a book there, you can. You can pre-order it or you can buy it on the night. And we hope to see you there. I've also got a couple of things coming up here in Far North Queensland. So if you are in Far North Queensland, make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter because I send out details of whatever events we have coming up. I'll be speaking at local business groups and libraries and things like that coming up as well. So if you can't get to a seminar, you may be able to get to one of our other talks. And Fuad will be speaking at the Wellness Breakthrough in Kiama. Is it Kiama or Kiama? I'm sorry, he's not here to tell me. I can't remember. But that's in New South Wales in June. So that's early June. You can go onto the Wellness Couch website and you can find out about that one. But we'll put all the links in the notes below, so have a look. And, if you have any questions, feel free to message, email, post on the page. We have lots of people in our team ready to get any messages through to us. So we always want to be there for you guys and always answer any of your questions. So feel free to ask. Okay, thanks for listening.
So we're back with our favorite GAPS practitioner, Elyse Comerford, to talk about a very popular topic that we covered in our last podcast with Liesl Barnard. We're talking about skin problems and eczema in particular. And we had such a huge amount of feedback on that podcast. And we thought that it would be really worthwhile doing another episode on it to talk a little bit more deeply about the GAPS perspective of eczema and how to deal with eczema from the inside, because Liesl's perspective was, even though it was broad, the focus was more on what do you do with your skin, what do you apply to your skin to help alleviate symptoms of eczema. And Elyse will be talking to us today about the holistic approach that includes dietary and lifestyle changes that you need to make. So Elyse, welcome again to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Hi, it's very exciting to be back.
Hi, Elyse. We missed you.
I want to be back on the tree.
Yeah, when are you coming? Every time I go out there to pick up my daughter from work, I'm like, I missed the retreat. And the weather's amazing at the moment, but I won't tell you that.
No, don't rub it in.
Hey, before we start, could you give I've had someone ask if you could give a good definition of eczema.
Oh,
that's a tricky
tough one.
I know.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
So, well, from what I'm going to look up a good definition while I'm talking.
Good, do that.
Okay, I'll give you my understanding of eczema. Eczema is not something that happens on the surface. It's something that happens deep in the layers of the skin. And what it is that when toxins are getting detoxed through the skin, our skin is a major detox organ. So when toxins are being detoxed through the skin, they actually cause an inflammatory reaction. So it's called cytokines. They're an inflammatory response. Cytokines are released. They cause the inflammation. And the eczema is actually a result of inflammation. So I guess that's pretty much a definition of eczema. It's just a inflammatory response from the skin, and it's happening in a deeper level. The damage isn't on the surface of the skin, it's at a deeper level.
And I also had someone ask,
so the symptoms of eczema is the itchiness, the dry skin and the redness and that kind of stuff. That's just a symptom of it, but the inflammation again
yes.
is what it really is that what you're saying, Elyse?
Yeah, it's deeper.
And is psoriasis sort of a type of eczema, or is that something completely different?
So they're both types of dermatitis.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. So it's really hard to try and determine between them.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it psoriasis, some people call it eczema. So it can be hard to differentiate, but they're all a kind of dermatitis. So eczema can also be called like atopic dermatitis.
And you treat them all the same?
And would you?
Sorry.
Yeah, that was really also my question, like in the same line. But is it the fact that there's inflammation deep in the skin and then it manifests itself differently, and then when it has a certain manifestation, we call it eczema, and then when it looks different, we call it psoriasis, but at the root cause, it's the same?
As to my understanding, root cause, it's the same. And root cause, well, it definitely is the same, because root cause is always going to be a gut issue.
Mm.
Elyse is always gut, heal the gut. So we're going to be hearing about that. I could summarize today's podcast for you in that phrase, heal the gut. But we'll take a little bit more.
Answer.
Well, it's true, isn't it?
So in the end, both like things like psoriasis and eczema, they present themselves a little bit differently. Psoriasis is more like they can be easily confused, but psoriasis, it's like when the cells, there's like extra skin cells being formed on the surface of the skin. But yeah, so at their core, they're both an immune response, and that's both being triggered by the gut or environmental allergen.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
That makes sense.
That explains it. Good.
Yeah, cool. So where to from here? Do you want me to start getting into the causes?
Well,
Yeah, I guess it's really interesting to sort of consider why an organ like the skin, which usually has, the ability to detox, why in some people it doesn't function, and why does this come about?
Okay. So in Western medicine, there's a lot of, we don't really know the exact cause of eczema. So scientists don't really understand exactly the etiology of it. But current theories really put eczema as being autoimmune, which is really the theory behind it with GAPS as well. So healing and sealing the gut, we all kind of know about autoimmune diseases that develops when there's damage to the gut lining, and then food particles, toxins produced by bacteria, they're able to move into the blood, directly into the blood, and then become systemic. So, and particularly with the food particles, the gut's leaky, they're moving through into the blood in a way that the body doesn't recognize as food and can start actually soliciting an immune response to that. So when we've got leaky gut and there's those toxins in the blood, they need to be removed from the body. So we can do that through the lungs, we can do it through the skin, the kidneys, the stool. So when those toxins reach the skin, they're causing damage to those deeper dermal layers, and the body then initiates an immune response with the inflammatory cytokines. And so that causes the inflammation, which leads to the eczema. So basically that's where the direct relationship happens with the gut. And I would definitely go as far to say that everyone with eczema would have some kind of gut issue. There's something going on in the gut to be eliciting that immune response. So when someone has eczema, the biggest confusion I find my clients have is it a food reaction or is it die-off detox? So it can be both. So skin's a major detox organ, so toxins are leaving through the body through the sweat. So when we're doing something like GAPS and detoxing and going through stages of die-off, eczema can flare. So the best way to tell the difference between what's going on there is if you've just introduced sauerkraut juice and then there's a flare with eczema, we can correlate that with the introduction of sauerkraut juice. If you just introduce nuts and then the eczema flares, we can go, all right, that's probably the nuts. So you are a bit of a detective, as you guys know, when you're doing something like that, and you just got to figure things out as you go. But yeah, so it's just kind of figuring out where you're at. If someone who's just on a standard diet and whose eczema's flaring, we know that's going to be food-based. If someone's just introduced probiotics, we know that's going to be die-off detox.
Okay.
So just a little bit of background for listeners who will be joining us new, because there's a lot of new listeners who come to the show. They'll be searching for something like eczema or stuff like that, and they'll come to the show and they'll hear us use the term GAPS. And this show is quite a lot about GAPS. Maybe 80% of our podcasts are on that topic or touch it in some way. But maybe, Elyse, you can just give a little bit of a brief background of what GAPS is, just maybe a 1 minute background, so that when we continue with the rest of the show, people are on board.
Okay. You're really challenging me there with a 1 minute.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Just go listen to Elise's GAPS 101. No, just kidding.
Basically, gut and psychology or gut and physiology syndrome is a condition which is basically connecting. It's the link between the gut and issues such as asthma, eczema, dyspraxia, dyslexia, autism, ADHD, depression, anxiety, celiac, IBS, allergies. So lots of physiological and psychological issues, and linking them to what is going on in the gut. So the GAPS protocol is a protocol which works at healing and sealing and repairing the gut lining and restoring the microbiome, which is the key to restoring health. All disease begins in the gut. So GAPS uses a really traditional style of diet that's based on whole foods. Some people think it's crazy and restrictive, but when you really look at the bones of it, all that's ever included is, even at the most restrictive phase, is still meat, vegetables. It's not that crazy or restrictive. So, yeah, is that a good overview?
It's good.
Yeah, and for our listeners who haven't heard the word microbiome, this is referring to the colonies of bacteria, yeast, fungi, viruses that inhabit our skin and live in our gut, and they modulate our immune system. They synthesize vitamins for us, and they do a lot of work to keep us alive. And it's really important to keep them in healthy populations and proportions to each other. And GAPS approaches this specific topic to make sure that the microbiome is healthy and that the place that they live in is nice and happy too. So that's where we talk a lot about gut health, to ensure that our gut is a good place for them and also a good place for us to digest our foods. So, are we saying that things like when my skin is flaring up, that my gut is unhealthy?
So if you're in the middle of doing GAPS and you just introduced fermented foods and your skin flared up, that would be toxins released.
Okay.
I guess we should explain the die-off response. So when at any point in time, if you were to introduce any kind of probiotic, so probiotic are beneficial bacteria, they're in a commercial probiotic capsule or in fermented foods. When you introduce that, it causes bad bacteria or opportunistic bacteria to die off. When they die off, they release their toxins, and then your body needs to deal with that. It needs to detox it in some way. So whenever we introduce probiotics or probiotic foods, fermented foods, we do so slowly just to ease into this die-off detox response. So by having that detox response, it's a good thing. It's causing die-off from that opportunistic bad bacteria, but they do release their toxins, and that can cause flaring of things, not just eczema, other things as well. And so it's something that you've got to keep at a manageable level. So that's one aspect of where you'll get the flaring. And then if eczema is like a chronic, lifelong issue for you, there is going to be a gut issue. So our eyes and our skin, that's how we can look at the health of what's going on inside. That's what visually we have to see whether or not a person's healthy. So if there's something going on with your major organ, your major detox organ, your skin, then there's something going on with your detox pathways, and there's toxicity in the body. And what we know with GAPS is that toxicity in the body stems from the gut. If there's overgrowth of bad bacteria, if the gut is leaky and allowing things through into the bloodstream that really shouldn't be there, then there's going to be there'll be an imbalance in bacteria as well, which means there'll be more of the bad guys overgrowing. They're really what's going to have caused the leaky gut. And they're going to be releasing their toxins into your system, which are going straight through your leaky gut into your blood. So you can see there's this effect of when the gut's damaged, there's going to be toxicity there. And so that's where the theory with GAPS is that this toxicity in the gut can lead to a whole range of issues. And it really goes beyond being a theory, in that science has definitively linked some of these issues to the gut. And research is absolutely exploding in this area, and we'll just keep linking more and more and more issues back to the gut, which Hippocrates knew it a really long time ago, but now we're just figuring it out.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, so when he spoke, he's the father of man who is often quoted for saying, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So GAPS is basically taking his advice and trying to figure out what the right foods are for healing the gut, or what the medicine is. And there's a lot of conflicting opinions about these things. And GAPS is the one that Joe and I have personally experienced and used ourselves, and brought ourselves back from feeling ill to a place that we're really, really healthy now and feel great. And every time we start going downhill, we go back to GAPS and we start feeling good again. There's a lot of podcasts about this topic, about Joe and her son Isaac. You can revisit as well in the podcast. But we find the diet to be incredibly healthy and incredibly powerful and very quick to show results. At least for us, it was. And for people who have like even severe autoimmune diseases, they've seen huge changes in relatively short periods of time, considering the amount of time they've been sick as well.
Absolutely.
And it has a bit of a unique approach to dealing with this this kind of gut health issues. That's maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea. Is it, firstly, like, would you treat eczema differently with GAPS as you would something else, or is let's psoriasis, or someone who gets recurring infections or ear infections or asthma, or kids with dyspraxia or something like that? Like, are there different approaches with GAPS, or is it the one approach, or how do you go about it?
Well, really, the approach with GAPS ends up being different person to person. So it's not something that you'd go, okay, this is GAPS for eczema, this is GAPS for this issue, this is GAPS for this issue, because everybody has usually more than one of the issues, and it won't be the same in everyone. And it really comes down to just working with the person and where they're at. So I guess that's one big thing about GAPS, and especially I always think this when I hear people say that GAPS didn't work for me. GAPS is a blueprint. It's like, here's the bones, here's how it should be.
Like literally the bones. Sorry.
I was waiting for that.
I totally missed that. This is the basic stages of how it should be implemented, but then that ends up looking different from person to person. And I guess the main difference, it's always going to be the same at the core, the way I work with people, but then often we're just trying to alleviate symptoms while we deal with the cause. So someone with eczema, I will get them taking evening primrose oil. I'll talk about some of the things we do for treating it. So it's, I guess, kind of a hard question to answer. But yeah, it's just so different person to person how we treat, and it's like a day-to-day thing. It's, okay, what's going on today? Okay, this is what we need to try. If someone has adrenal fatigue, I'll get them to have more egg yolks. If someone's got a thyroid issue, we might use some natural thyroid supplements. So it's always just going with where someone's at, and any kind of supplementing is just really based on your case by case.
So, all right, maybe let's look into the eczema aspect and how, in your experience, you've dealt with it and what's worked and what hasn't.
Okay. So I'm going to say GAPS.
Heal the gut.
Yes.
GAPS has worked.
Yeah, GAPS has worked. So really, in my experience treating eczema, it has always been with GAPS. So that's the approach I take. When people come to work with me, they don't come to me with, I think I just need to change my diet because I've got this issue. They have changed the whole foods. They've done this, they've done that. They've learned about GAPS. They've read all these books, and they've already fairly well versed and know at least about GAPS and have intention of doing it. So I really just work with people that are about to or already doing GAPS. So that is the approach I take with treating eczema. So by getting to the core of the issue and healing the gut, it means that we're removing toxicity, because at the core, that is the issue that is going on with eczema. It's toxicity. It's the immune system having an inflammation response. So by healing and sealing the gut lining and then working at restoring that bacteria in the gut, we're actually removing toxicity. And a big part of the GAPS protocol is supporting the detox pathways. So we do that by doing things like Epsom salt baths, there's juicing,
Enemas.
there's eating liver, which is everyone's favourite thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
There's enemas, everyone's second favourite thing to do.
Yeah, I think I'd rather the enemas.
And just by removing toxic foods from the diet and removing toxins from our environment, so just by doing all these things, we're actually taking that toxic load off the body, which will ease that inflammation response, because then we're not pushing things through the skin that are damaging and causing inflammation. So that's my first and best answer is do GAPS, heal and seal the gut, remove the toxins in the body and in the environment so that the skin's not having that inflammatory response anymore. And I've seen amazing results with this. I actually have I'll contact a client and see if I can share her photos and I'll send them to you guys if that's okay, which I'm sure it will be. And we've got really amazing photos of before we started and like 5 or 6 weeks in, and then probably about a couple of months in. Can't remember the time frame, but it goes from like bleeding, really horrible eczema on his face to completely clear.
Wow.
Really amazing. So
And that's just in a few months.
Yeah, that's just in a couple of months. So it's not like by trying to take this approach, it's not like it's a super slow one. As soon as you take that toxic load off the skin, so it's not having to deal with these toxins and have this inflammatory response, then you will see improvement.
Wow, that's great.
So the things we do alongside GAPS, specifically for eczema, is we do the Epsom salt baths, which everybody does on GAPS. Epsom salts help draw toxins out of the skin. So those toxins that are sitting in those dermal layers of the skin, the Epsom salts help to draw that out. So it removes those toxins so it can stop that inflammatory response. You can also do bicarb baths, so half a cup. That's particularly good for eczema. You can actually get oats uncooked and put them in a bag and run the bath through it.
I've done that before. It's amazing.
Yeah, really soothing for the skin.
Yeah.
And although, you know, grains aren't allowed on GAPS, you can bathe in it. For applying something to ease the pain and the dryness of eczema, it's some edible fat. So some kind of edible fat, whether it's tallow, lard, coconut oil. So one of those, and evening primrose oil is really good for eczema. So you can take that orally. For adults, it'd be 4,000 milligrams a day for 6 weeks, and then 2,000 milligrams a day after that. And then for children, I'd halve that dose.
Isn't evening primrose oil like in omega-6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and it was my understanding that we sort of try to keep the ratios of like omega-3s to omega-6 like in the favor of omega-3s as much as we can, and the omega-6s are usually an overabundance in our diets, and we probably, like, our cells are quite inflamed because of the intake of omega-6s, like in part, that we've had historically. So I'm just interested about that point and how evening primrose oil is like different to something like canola or soybean oil.
So as soon as you go on a diet like GAPS, you're not having that high omega-6 fats in your diet. So although omega-6 fats are vilified, they're not something that we need to avoid. So basically when you're doing something like that, evening primrose oil is a very healthy omega-6 oil, and you will be having omega-3s. So it's not that you need more omega-3s than omega-6s. It's just that the omega-6 amount of omega-6s you have when you're eating a standard diet and those disgusting oils, then you're having a ridiculous amount of omega-6s. So that when it comes to doing something like GAPS, that's not really an issue, and it will be balanced out with what else you're having in your diet. So you'll be doing fish oils, you'll be doing cod liver oil. So you will be getting a good balance. So there's no.
I guess it's also worth noting for our listeners that there's when you look at the science and they look at things like omega-3s and 6s, and then we start looking at just that as a factor for making our decision, then it doesn't help us see the big picture. Something like evening primrose oil that has come from a high-quality process and produces a high-quality oil is going to be much more beneficial for you than an oxidized one that you just get from any ordinary chemist that's had it on the shelf. So just make sure that when you actually go and choose your evening primrose oil, that you're getting like really fresh stuff that's well kept and well stored and hasn't been exposed to heat. And the best that you can really afford is what. Is there a brand that you recommend, Elyse?
I don't really have a specific brand that I recommend. No.
Okay, cool.
But
we'll have a look and put something in the show notes later. Yeah.
When you talk about the fats that, like you mentioned, tallow and lard, do you mean putting them on the skin or getting them into the diet?
Well, both really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
On the skin. Yeah, on the skin was what I was talking about there.
Yeah, because I know tallow is traditionally something that's always been used for like rough skin and dry skin and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the only that anything you apply to your skin has to be edible.
Yes.
Because it absorbs straight into your bloodstream.
Yeah. One of our sponsors, Weleda, has a really excellent evening primrose oil lotion, which I use actually, and I really like it. It's worth having a look at. We'll put some links in the Weleda website for you in the podcast later. But it's fantastic. I really recommend that one. But I'm thinking about taking supplements. I don't know of any brand about supplements, so I'll also research that, and if we find something good, we'll put some links in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so these are the topical applications. So what are your thoughts about using pharmaceuticals? So
I actually pulled up a bit of research. I've got, first of all, the common side effects of cortisone cream. So cortisone cream is usually the go-to in terms of pharmaceuticals for treatment of eczema and psoriasis. So I've got in front of me the list of side effects, which is really interesting. The first one is skin redness, burning, itching, peeling. The second is thinning of your skin, blistering skin, stretch marks, nausea, heartburn, headache, dizziness, menstrual period changes, trouble sleeping, increased sweating or acne.
Good gracious. Wow.
Yeah, I've had 10 years of that stuff at least.
Yeah. So the way steroid creams actually work is they dampen the immune system. So remember I was talking about how the eczema is an immune response as toxins are reaching the skin to be detoxed, and they instigate that reaction with the inflammatory cytokines. So cortisone cream is dampening that reaction. So it's dampening the immune system, which is really the exact opposite of what we want. We don't want to dampen the immune system. So it's very hard to give a blanket recommendation of don't ever use them, because every case is different. And if someone has a child screaming and bleeding in pain, to tell them not to use a cream that they know may give some immediate relief would be a very difficult thing to do. In my experience so far with eczema, I have been able to tell people to not use the cortisone cream, because once we start dealing with the toxicity, there is relief. So my experience so far is to not need to use any pharmaceuticals. So I wouldn't rule it out altogether, as it would never be the case, and it really depends on an individual situation, but I haven't had to yet. So
so infections, or when the skin is, like you're saying, bleeding and all that, these are not like this will turn around rather quickly on GAP, and the skin will heal up quickly?
Yeah, pretty quickly. So things we do when eczema is quite severe like that is the bicarb bars, as I was saying, the oatmeal, the applying the edible fat, the evening primrose oil, and also doing honey, like applying honey to the eczema and wrapping it overnight. So you can wrap it in cling wrap, or I prefer parchment paper. Save the earth, no plastic. Honey. So honey, and you can also do seaweed. So get some hot water and mix it with a seaweed powder like Algo, AALGO powder, and apply that like a thick kind of cream poultice, and then cover and leave overnight if possible, and then wash it off and apply the edible fat to it again. So that provides really quick relief from severe eczema. So that's a good thing to do. And then I mentioned that taking the evening primrose oil internally, and other things that we do on GAPS that we take internally that help with eczema is the cod liver oil. So vitamin A is really good for the skin, animal sources of vitamin A. So cod liver oil is high in that, so that is really beneficial. So taking that, the general dose is 1 teaspoon a day of cod liver oil. If someone's just starting out and they've got severe eczema, we could do 2 teaspoons of cod liver oil a day, just for a short period of time to really get that vitamin A up. And then
what about like
oil?
You'd reduce the dose according to the size of the person, so like with half a teaspoon or something.
So children generally will do their dose is half a teaspoon. So if there was a child with severe eczema that was just starting out on GAPS, we could introduce it as a teaspoon per day. Doubling the dose is generally something you'd probably want your practitioner to do. That can be kind of determined on a case-by-case basis. But children, half a teaspoon is the general recommended dose of cod liver oil on GAPS, and 1 teaspoon for adults.
Great. That's excellent. Is there? I've been doing some personal experiments recently, Elyse, with fasting and just generally eating 1 meal a day. I've been doing that for close to 2 months now, 5 days a week, and I've noticed like a huge improvement in my skin quality, and I think like I have some issues with detoxification, and when I've just lowered the load of food that I take in, I found that everything's improved greatly. Is there room for like fasting or something like that to assist with faster healing for people?
Absolutely. And the kind of angle you come to with fasting is you've been on, like, you're on a paleo diet for a long time and GAPS for a while. So you come from a really good, you're very fat adapted. You come from a whole food diet. So someone who's on a standard diet, I wouldn't say go eat 1 meal a day.
No, they wouldn't cope. This is what I've been saying.
They already think you're crazy if they're like, so the difference between when you're on a standard diet, you're very reliant on carbs, which means your blood sugar has huge fluctuations, and it's like eat breakfast, have your cereal and toast, blood sugar spike, crash at 10 a.m., have a snack, blood sugar spike, crash at lunchtime. So it's just this up and down of energy. When you're doing something like GAPS or paleo, kind of whole food style diet, it's generally naturally high in fat, which is what our diets are meant to be. And you don't really get those crashes. Your adrenals are what look after kind of regulating your blood sugar levels. So adrenals are really important for feeling good and energetic. By doing this kind of naturally kind of high fat diet, you're keeping your adrenals pretty happy by having your blood sugars nice and balanced. So when you fast, you would find, and I know I find when I fast, that you pretty much I usually go with a principle called when. So it's when, W-H-E-N, when hunger ensues naturally. So you fast with this kind of feeling of, okay, I'm like wake up in the morning, I can totally fast today. I don't even feel that hungry. And then lunchtime comes around, yep, I'm good to keep going. Dinner comes around and it might be, yeah, okay, I'm hungry now. So that's when hunger ensues naturally. And that's really the principle you should follow when you fast.
That's good.
It's not like I'm fasting today, so, oh my God, I'm so hungry.
And I'm dizzy and I'm whatever. I'm not going to eat.
And, oh my gosh, like that's not
I'm definitely learning that myself. Like I'm finding that firstly, hunger signals that I used to think are serious hunger actually aren't. They're just like, hey, like it'd be nice to eat something now.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that, and real hunger. But like for instance, sometimes I'll eat at 3 p.m. and sometimes at 5 p.m. depending on how hungry I feel. But it's just like in terms of, I've always struggled with really poor skin. Like some of the worst skin that, this planet has seen really was mine. And I still like go up and down, nowhere near as bad as I used to be. And I don't take medication or anything like that for it. But, on GAPS, it improved greatly. And, there were scars from the scratches. Like I'd scratched myself before GAPS and there were scars there, and they're slow healing things. And on fasting, I find scars heal more quickly, and it seems that the body just diverts its attention to healing somehow a little bit better.
It does. And that's why a lot of, when people start looking into GAPS, they might learn that in stage 1 there is some fasting. So it's just what the body naturally does, and we've got things we do to make sure blood sugars don't crash. But you naturally go into a fasting state because you're detoxing so much. So you start stage 1, you start detoxing so much, you don't feel very hungry, and what you're eating is very easy to digest. So it's putting your body naturally in a fasting state, which is our natural healing mode. It's when the attention, the energy is taken off digestion, we can heal. So when you're in a position where you're able to fast comfortably, then doing so is really beneficial because you are taking that load off. You're just giving your body this break so it can detox things and process things and not having to be focused on digestion. So, I think fasting can really help a lot.
Is it a good idea for people to put their children on a fasting diet, or how would you approach that?
So, with children, it's not that you would really go and put your child on a fasting diet, because that moves away from the when principle, because it would be you putting them on it. So I have some clients that will say to me, they're not hungry in the morning, do I have to make them eat? And I say no. So no, you don't have to let them listen to their body. So it wouldn't be so much, hey, I'm putting you on a fasting diet, but more if they're not hungry, which some people can't imagine their children not being hungry, but if you balance blood sugars and get them off the addiction to carbs, they will actually have moments when they're not hungry, that you don't make them eat. And that really goes against what a lot of the societal norms, which is force your children to finish every bite of food.
Every meal. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the phobia about having them skip a meal is a big deal in our culture.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was just having this conversation with a client today, because once you step out of it, it really spins my head.
Yeah.
Seeing people in it, because I've been there. That same. Yes. Oh my gosh, I used to feel like that. Like, you just have to feed to them, and if they don't want to eat every 2 hours, something's wrong, and you've got to carry food around everywhere.
Yes.
You're hungry. You just can't have them being hungry.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. I think food industry, snack industry rub their hands together about that.
We're not ruminants, we don't have to graze all day.
Yeah, but that's how
we're built to withstand some hunger.
I know when my kids were little, that was, I haven't got small kids now. I'm not sure what the in thing is, but it was very in to have your kids constantly grazing and always have food available and just let them sort of eat whenever. And because the food was there, they were just wanting it all the time. And I know when we were kids, we always had breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, supper, every day. That was just what you did. And now I look at that and think, oh my goodness. Sorry. Are you there?
You mentioned, Joe, you came and visited.
Lost. I can't hear you.
I had breakfast. Can you hear me?
Now I can.
You remember when you came over for a visit to do those classes in Canberra and the Blue Mountains just recently?
Yeah.
We had a big day ahead, so I had breakfast with you.
Yeah.
And I just kept eating all day.
Yeah.
And I was like, look at me, I'm just eating all day.
Yeah.
And it was such a weird thing because like food makes you eat more food.
Yeah.
Like the minute you put something in your mouth, you just open,
the floodgates.
and then things just keep coming in there.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's a good idea. If you're not hungry in the morning, just don't eat until you feel hungry. Don't force yourself to do it. Yeah.
And overnight is when you do a lot of your detoxing. So if you don't have an appetite in the morning, it's because your body's still detoxing. So it's really allowing it the space to do that. Have a lemon water.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, good advice.
Yeah.
What's a good time to stop eating? Like we switch this to fasting, but I'm just interested because it does go in hand in hand.
That's all right. We knew we'd go off on rabbit trails.
Stage 1 gaps. Yeah, but like stage 1 in gaps or like intro.
Yeah.
That's like a fasting diet, really. Like you're eating a lot of cooked foods that get absorbed so quickly and they don't spike your insulin, and that's almost like fasting mimicry.
That's
but
exactly
with calories and nutrition on top, which is incredible.
That's exactly it. So that is, in essence, what stage 1 of GAPS is. So people that aren't familiar with how GAPS diet works, there's an intro phase, which is a more restrictive phase, stage 1 to 6, and then full GAPS, which just looks like a whole food diet, really. So in stage 1, all that's consumed are meat stocks with slow cooked meats and vegetables. So because the meat stocks are slow cooked, the veggies are slow cooked, it's in the stock, it's got lots of healing properties, that actually does put your body in a natural fasting state because it's digested so quickly and easily. So, that's exactly what we're doing in GAPS, is putting our body in that fasting mode while still getting the nutrients and the energy requirements that we need. So,
And you do often see kids on stage 1 of GAPS not wanting to eat much.
No, and that's because they're detoxing. So that's their body saying no because I've got stuff to deal with now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember those photos of Emma's kids.
I know. I was thinking of that. Emma's our assistant, and she's had some great before and after photos with the eczema, hasn't she?
We'll see if we can put those on, but like her kid was just standing in photos and just like so unhappy and body's covered.
And he's like
and
you can see he's holding his body really tightly because he's trying not to itch in the photo. Yeah. The first one, Yeah. And
it's really
not long.
6 months photo, I think it was.
Yeah, 6 months,
later that he was just perfect kid.
And this is totally
happy with a big smile.
This is off track, but I've got to tell you this. Emma sent me, she won't mind me saying, she sent me a video that she found of 4 years ago of the same child when he was so bad, and he was stuttering really badly and he couldn't get his words out and he was so unwell. And to see the difference in that kid now, like he's doing acting and stuff like this, like he's got the most beautiful happy sort of smile, and he's got this beautiful voice and speaks well and he looks amazing. It's like, wow, different kid. So good.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people coming, like starting to look at GAPS and going, oh, but I could never put my child through that.
Are you kidding me?
It's pretty easy for me to say on this end of it because I've worked with hundreds of families through GAPS now.
You've seen them come out the other side.
I wouldn't put my child through the suffering of not doing it.
Yeah, same.
So it's like in the worst of it, on average, it's a week or two of the worst of it. Yeah. And it's like nursing your child through a gastro bug or the flu. And I've had a client who her children were pretty bad on intro. I think they were 9 days of refusing food and vomiting and really unwell, 2 girls, and I think about probably 8 weeks in, it was Mother's Day, and they wrote cards, "Thank you for doing gaps with us, Mummy. We feel so much better," and things like that. Like, so it doesn't even matter if they really suffer in that. They are so grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're glad later.
Yeah, it's just amazing how switched on they are to their bodies once they do something like that.
Yeah.
And parent, like I'll have kid clients telling their mum, "No, I don't think I'm ready for that. It doesn't quite feel right," and things like that. They just get really switched on with what's going on in their body. It's really amazing. I think it's a beautiful gift to give your children, you know, while they're young, and then it affects their health for the rest of their life. So
yes, Elyse.
Well, just because I went and pulled out quite a few scientifical.
That's a good word. I like that.
Yeah, you cut that bit out.
No, it's cute. I like it.
You can trust her. You can say scientific.
Yeah, you can so trust me.
We're doing this at night, okay, guys? Our brains are, a little slower.
So that I went to say scientific and scholarly in the same word, and it came out scientifical. So I did delve into some scholarly articles before doing this, because often with gaps we learn from Facebook pages and from blogs and stuff, and I do like to draw back on the science to go, this stuff is actually backed by science. So I looked in some of the science about eczema, and there were some interesting finds. So IgE allergies, studies actually show that they're associated strongly with eczema, asthma, and rhinitis. So eczema and asthma and rhinitis seem to be related as well. They kind of go hand in hand. So a study actually showed that IgE responses are really strongly linked to eczema, which is GAPS really looks at the fact that IgE responses are because of leaky gut. So, when there's leaky gut and there's food particles that are going through into our blood in a way our body doesn't recognize as food and then starts attacking it, that's when we can start having things like the IgE responses. So studies show that healthy, balanced gut flora early in life actually protects against eczema. So when there is a good biodiversity of gut bacteria early in life, there's less chance of getting eczema. And children who develop eczema have a predominance of the bacteria from Clostridium family, and those who did not develop eczema had higher bacteroids. So that's showing that what's going on with the bacteria in the gut is strongly correlated with eczema. So another one with the bacteria in the gut is, where is it? It was strep. So when there's high strep, and I have pretty much all my clients who have done bioscreening tell me they've got an overgrowth of strep. So that's really strongly correlated with eczema. And candida.
Yeah, someone asked about that in the chat group.
Yeah, so there's actually a study done on it, and it does show that candida is significantly prevalent in people with eczema and asthma. So there's definitely that connection there.
So it's all related.
So candida weakens the immune system.
Okay.
Yes. So there's some science.
So are these strains that are like missing or low, are they available in pills, or do you get them in like sauerkraut? Where do they come from?
Yeah,
Is the aim at or adding them? Like would you add to your diet, or can you even do that?
Yeah, so they're things you will find in probiotics and in fermented foods, but it's like the overgrowth of things like Clostridium and strep that are having a big impact as well. So with overgrowth of bacteria, the way that we resolve that is by bringing in more of the good bacteria, which gets that under control. So when there's overgrowth of things like Clostridium and Strep, one of the first approaches that Western medicine will take is antibiotics. Thing about when there's overgrowth with a bacteria like Clostridium or Strep, there's damage to that ecosystem that is in our gut. So the gut is an ecosystem, and when we just go in with antibiotics, they don't discriminate. They will reduce that overgrowth, but they'll also kill off other things. And what they're doing is actually further damaging that ecosystem. And studies also show that when we go in and treat things with antibiotics, often they come back and usually worse. So that's because we've just further damaged that ecosystem, allowing things to become more overgrown. So in healing the gut, and this is really the approach that GAPS takes, we're restoring that ecosystem. And I often, a way to kind of explain this to people, it's like the difference between if you had a bucket of water and you tried to, say if you had a bucket of dirty water and you could tip it out, or you could get a hose and stick it in and then just slowly let it overflow. That's what it's like trying to change your ecosystem and detox when you're doing GAPS. You don't just tip out a bucket and start again. You're basically putting more, like in this example, I'm such an analogy person.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. You're very good at them.
Always use analogies.
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing, the only way to change this ecosystem is sticking that hose in the bucket, and it just gradually starts to just put more of the fresh water in and get more of that dirty water out. So that's how we're transforming that ecosystem that is the gut. And, you know, the gut has this symbiotic relationship. It's the microbes and it's the gut lining. So you need, just like you need healthy soil to grow pretty flowers, you need healthy gut lining to grow good bacteria. So it needs to be in a healthy environment for the good bacteria to flourish, and then you need good bacteria flourishing to keep that gut lining happy as well. So it's this work you're doing at just transforming this environment, and it's like, I guess as well, another analogy, if you cut down a certain species of tree in a forest, it'd take time for that whole ecosystem to change and adapt. So that's the way our ecosystem is. I don't even know if I was answering a question then. I went off on a little tangent.
No, that's okay. Tangents are good.
Even to the topic, and really well explained. Yeah, very scientifically. So what did you say? Scientific articles. Yeah, very
scientifical.
Scientifical, that's it. It's very scientific.
So guys, if we've sort of made this argument make sense to you, and it kind of resonated with you about gut health and what it takes to heal things like eczema, and you're interested more about GAPS, we have quite a lot of podcasts that we can refer you back to. We've got a really good one with Elyse on GAPS 101 that is really worthwhile listening to if you haven't already. And we'll put a few links in the show notes as well, so that anything else that is relevant to this, you'll be able to go through. But we really recommend going through the podcast and also picking a few GAPS podcasts that resonate with you, because there's a lot to learn about this. And good luck on your journey. Elyse, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's awesome, learning a lot from you, and it's fantastic to have someone who can bring such clarity and the GAPS perspective, which we stand with because we've seen so much positive results for us and for our community as well. We've got thousands of people who are doing the online gut health program with us, and they're all benefiting greatly. And it's just such a wonderful approach. And what a great thing it is to tell people, hey, you don't have to go on anything crazy. Just eat some meat and vegetables and you'll be better.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
And it really is. It's a gift, because otherwise you're just trying to tell people some crazy script for something, Otherwise, it's just not natural to us. And it's great because GAPS is just a natural way of eating, and it's very helpful, So.
Yeah, most people say that they looked at all these ways of, looked into all these different diets and all these different things, and then looked into gaps, and it just makes sense.
Just
and
clicks.
It does. It just clicks, and it sounds true. It feels true. And then when you look into it and see the benefits people are getting from it, then it is true. And that's why it's just exploding. There's just so many people looking into it now.
We've really noticed that.
Yeah, well, I think you guys have had a really big impact on that, getting it out to people and making it more accessible, which is awesome.
Can I just say also, for people who are very new to the whole idea of gaps, we did a blog post. If you just go onto the blog that says, "Where do I start with gaps?" and we'll put a link in the show notes, but it's just simple steps that will start heading you in that direction. Getting you onto the whole food way of eating and helping you move towards gaps, because I know that sometimes you look at these things and go, I'm overwhelmed, but it's not overwhelming, and it's something that everyone can do and just start reaping the benefits, like Elyse says, quite quickly.
Yeah.
Vegetables, guys, bones, lots of bone broth.
Yeah. And if it didn't get some kind of result fairly quickly, I don't think people would stick with gaps. I think that's why we all stick with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, we saw results within a couple of weeks. We started seeing results, so yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm coming up to visit you, Fu.
Oh, I thought you were going to say me.
Yeah, because I want to come and visit. We need to see you. I'm going to bring Dylan. We want to hang out.
Yeah, and do it before mid-September, because I'm going to go overseas for a few weeks. So please come sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we will.
Elyse, would you be able to tell people where they can find you?
So you can find me at ElyseComerford.com or Facebook.com/Elyse Health.
Elyse, you also have a website.
Lost you there, Fu.
Lost a little bit.
It's called, maybe do a plug for that as well.
Oh, thanks, Fu. It's Coal Coast, so COAL, coastorganics.com.au, and I have pretty much everything you need for gaps on there.
Yeah.
And then for that little pop-up thing will come up for 10% off your first order, which is exciting too.
I think we've got a coupon code for podcasters. I'm not sure. We might be able to share that with you guys anyway on your order too, if it's your second order or any other order. Elyse, again, thank you so much. Joy, you don't have any more questions for Elyse?
No, that's okay. I think we've gone through all the questions. I did post a little, anyone want to know anything about eczema on the gut health support group. And so I think we've covered it all. You've done well, Elyse. Thank you.
Oh, no problems at all. Thanks for having me. I love chatting with you guys.
And for those of you who are in the gut health program, Elyse is our lovely GAPS practitioner that answers questions in the Q&As each week. So, pop in and ask if you've got any more questions for her next Q&A.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Elyse.
Grace, thank you. See ya.
Okay, bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.